You have probably said something, then you regret talking about it within the last week. It may be a small lie, a silence when you should have spoken up, a moment where you protected yourself instead of someone else. You told yourself it was nothing. But what if one of the most loyal men who ever lived did the exact same thing 3 times in one night, and it became one of the most studied failures in human history? Most people hear this story and feel a little superior. They think, I would never do that. I would have stood there. I would have spoken up. But the historical and psychological reality of that night is far more layered than a simple story about cowardice. And once you understand what was actually happening inside Peter in that courtyard on that specific night, you will never read this story the same way again. Because the real question is not, why did Peter deny Jesus? The real question is, why does this story still cut so deep into people 2,000 years later? The story begins here. Let's go back to the beginning of that night. Hours earlier, Peter said something extraordinary. In Matthew 26:33, he tells Jesus, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." Not maybe, not I will try, I never will. This was not empty bravado. The historian Josephus describes Galilean fishermen of this era as physically tough, fiercely loyal to their own, and accustomed to danger on open water. Peter was not a soft man making an easy promise. He was a man who had pulled nets through storms. And just minutes later, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter proved he meant it. When the temple guards came to arrest Jesus, John 18:10 tells us Peter drew a sword and struck a servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Think about that for a moment. This is not a man who is afraid of confrontation. This is a man willing to draw a blade against armed soldiers sent by the religious authorities of Jerusalem. So how does that same man, within hours, deny even knowing Jesus to a servant girl? Guys, actually, this is where the story becomes something deeper than a simple morality tale. After the arrest, Jesus is taken to the house of the high priest. Peter follows, not from a distance out of fear, but close enough to get into the courtyard itself. Luke 22:54 says Peter followed at a distance, but he still followed. Every other disciple scattered completely, but Peter did not. He pushed past soldiers, past temple guards, past the very people who had just watched him swing a sword in the garden to get close enough to see what would happen to Jesus. Does that sound like a coward to you? Not for me. I guess it is in this courtyard, warming himself by a charcoal fire because it was a cold spring night in Jerusalem, that the first denial happens. A servant girl looks at him and says, "You also were with Jesus of Galilee." And Peter says, "I do not know what you are talking about." Why would the bravest of the disciples, the one who fled when everyone else fled, suddenly crumble in front of a servant girl? Here is the historical detail almost no one talks about. The high priest's courtyard was not some quiet side room. It was the central holding area for a religious trial that could end in execution. Roman soldiers were present that night, men trained for crucifixion duty, men who had likely seen Peter swing a sword just an hour earlier. Peter was not just risking embarrassment. He was sitting in the exact location where the people who arrested Jesus and who he had just attacked could identify him as an armed accomplice. The Roman historian Tacitus, writing decades later, describes how swiftly Roman authority dealt with anyone associated with rebellion or violence against their officials. Peter was not worried about looking foolish. He was sitting feet away from the men who could have him arrested, tried, and crucified beside Jesus before morning. This changes the entire emotional landscape of that courtyard, doesn't it? The second denial comes shortly after. Another servant recognizes him. Again, he denies it, this time with an oath, according to Matthew 26:72. And the third time is the most devastating. Matthew 26:73 says those standing there came up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them, for your accent gives you away." They said, "Your accent gives you away." Peter was a Galilean. Galileans had a distinct regional dialect that Jerusalem residents could immediately identify. It's like the way you might instantly recognize someone's hometown the moment they open their mouth. He could not hide. His own voice was betraying him. And in that moment of total exposure, surrounded, identified, cornered, Peter denies Jesus a third time, this time according to Mark 14:71, calling down curses on himself. And then the rooster crows. Luke 22:61 records the most quietly devastating detail in the entire account. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Not a guard, not a servant girl. Jesus himself, from across that courtyard, in the middle of his own trial, turned and looked Peter directly in the eyes. What do you think passed between them in that look? Peter went outside and wept bitterly. Peter did not fail because he was a coward. The man drew a sword against armed soldiers an hour earlier. Peter failed because real, immediate physical danger had finally caught up to a promise made in the safety of an upper room. It is remarkably easy to declare loyalty when the threat is theoretical. "I never will" is an easy sentence to say at a dinner table. It is an entirely different thing to say it while surrounded by the very soldiers who can end your life before sunrise, with your own accent giving away exactly who you are. This is the hidden truth beneath this story. Peter's denial was not a unique character flaw belonging only to him. It was the universal human gap between conviction and consequence, exposed in real time, under maximum pressure, in front of witnesses. And here is the part of the story that almost no one talks about, the part that completely reframes everything. Jesus already knew this would happen, and he told Peter directly before any of it occurred. In Luke 22:31-32, Jesus says, "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." I'll read this line again. Jesus did not say, "if you turn back." He said, "when you have turned back." Jesus knew before it happened that Peter would fail completely. And in that same breath, Jesus already had the restoration planned. The failure was anticipated. The forgiveness was already prepared. The future ministry, "strengthen your brothers," was already assigned to him. This means Peter's worst night was never a surprise to Jesus. It was never the end of the story. It was simply the painful middle chapter that made the ending possible. Because 3 chapters later, after the resurrection, John 21 records one of the most beautiful scenes in all of Scripture. Jesus appears to the disciples by the Sea of Galilee, and he asks Peter the same question 3 times, deliberately mirroring the 3 denials. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" There are 3 denials by a charcoal fire, 3 affirmations of love by another charcoal fire. John 21:9 specifically mentions the fire. On the same shore where Peter had once cast nets as a fisherman, on the same kind of night he had once broken under pressure. Jesus did not simply forgive Peter quietly. He restored him publicly, deliberately, in the exact emotional architecture of his failure, so that the restoration would be as complete as the collapse. This is not a story about a weak man who let his Lord down. This is a story about a God who already knew the depth of your weakness before you ever revealed it to him, and built your restoration into the plan before you even needed it. Think about the moment in your life you are most ashamed of. The promise you broke, the person you let down when the pressure became real instead of theoretical. You probably believe that moment defines you, the way Peter's denial seems to define him at first glance. But the same God who looked across a courtyard at Peter, in the middle of his own unjust trial with a look that led Peter to weep, is the same God who built the restoration plan before the failure ever happened. Peter went on to become the very rock the early church was built upon. The book of Acts records him preaching boldly to thousands, healing the sick, standing before the same religious authorities who once intimidated him into denial, no longer afraid, no longer hiding his accent or his identity. The man who once denied even knowing Jesus to a servant girl later refused to deny him before the entire Sanhedrin.
the same body that had condemned Jesus to death. Acts 4:13 says the religious leaders were astonished because they recognized Peter as someone who had been with Jesus. This time, his association with Jesus was not something he hid. It was something he could no longer hide because it had become the defining truth of his life.
Knowing about this story is not a waste of time. You can actually take something valuable from this story. The next time you carry the weight of a moment you wish you could undo, a promise you broke under pressure you did not expect, remember this. You probably said something you regret within the last week, but the same God who already knew what Peter would do before he did it, and who had already written the restoration before the failure ever happened, knows exactly what you did too, and he is already planning what comes after it. So, what do you think of Peter and his actions? Share your thoughts in the comments, so that others who don't know the other perspective will also know about that. Thank you.